Thunder rumbled across the dark sky, lightning splitting through the heavy storm clouds like jagged scars. Rain poured in relentless sheets, drumming against the metal roof of the small police outpost on the outskirts of town. Inside, Lieutenant Ethan Carter leaned back in his chair, feet propped up on the desk, his gaze drifting lazily toward the rain-streaked window. It was another slow, uneventful night, the kind he had come to expect in this quiet district. The clock on the wall struck 1 a.m. when a faint scratching sound broke the silence. Ethan frowned. At first, he thought it was just the wind or some debris being tossed around by the storm, but then he heard it again, a persistent scratching at the glass door, followed by a soft whimper. Curious, he stood up, grabbing his flashlight as he made his way toward the entrance. The moment his beam of light cut through the darkness outside, his breath caught in his throat. A soaking wet dog stood on the porch, trembling from the cold, her golden-brown fur plastered against her lean frame. Her eyes, wide, desperate, and pleading, locked onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. But what truly caught his attention was the 5 tiny puppies huddled behind her, barely visible under the dim light, their small bodies shivering in the cold. Ethan hesitated for a fraction of a second before pushing the door open. The dog lunged forward, not in aggression, but in desperation. She didn't run inside to seek shelter. Instead, she bit onto the hem of his pants and tugged hard. "Whoa, easy there, girl," Ethan muttered, taken aback by her urgency. He knelt down, reaching out cautiously, but the dog only pulled harder, looking up at him with those urgent, terrified eyes. Something was wrong. "Okay," he sighed, grabbing his raincoat and a flashlight. "I'm coming." The moment he stepped outside, the mother dog took off, darting through the rain with her puppies scrambling behind her. Ethan followed, the downpour quickly soaking through his clothes. They moved through the dark streets, the storm muting every sound except for the pounding rain and the distant rolling thunder. Ethan's instincts screamed that whatever he was about to find wasn't good. After about 10 minutes of running, they reached an abandoned warehouse near the riverbank, a crumbling structure long forgotten by the town. The dog skidded to a stop, barking frantically as she clawed at the rusted door. Ethan's heart pounded. Something was inside. Raising his flashlight, he stepped forward and pushed the door open. The stench of blood hit him first. Then, in the beam of his flashlight, he saw the unconscious man sprawled across the damp floor. Ethan rushed forward, kneeling beside the injured man. His clothes were soaked, not just from the rain, but also from the blood seeping from a deep wound on his shoulder. He was barely breathing. "Damn it," Ethan muttered, quickly reaching for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Lieutenant Carter. I have a wounded civilian at the abandoned warehouse near Riverside. I need medical assistance immediately." The mother dog barked, drawing Ethan's attention back to her. She nudged the injured man with her nose, whimpering softly as if trying to wake him. Ethan studied the man's face. Despite the grime and blood, he looked familiar, someone he had seen around town before. Then it clicked. Alex Grant. Alex was a single father, known for keeping to himself. He lived in a small house on the outskirts, working night shifts to provide for his young son. Ethan's stomach twisted. If Alex was here, bleeding out on the warehouse floor, where was his son? As if reading his mind, the mother dog whined again, then took off toward the back of the warehouse, stopping at a section of the wall. She began scratching and barking at the floorboards, her body rigid with urgency. Ethan followed, shining his flashlight over the area. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the dark smears of blood trailing toward a wooden trapdoor. He dropped to his knees, yanking at the rusted handle. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase leading underground. Then, from the darkness below, he heard it. A faint, muffled cry. Ethan wasted no time. He descended into the darkness, gun drawn, his breath coming fast. The space below was cramped and damp, the walls lined with old wooden planks. In the dim glow of his flashlight, he spotted a small metal cage in the corner. Inside, a little boy, no older than 7, huddled in fear, his tear-streaked face peering through the bars. Ethan's heart clenched. "Hey, kid," he said gently, lowering his gun. "It's okay. I'm here to help." The boy sniffled, his wide eyes darting toward the entrance of the basement, as if afraid someone else would come in. Ethan reached for the lock, but before he could act, click. The unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked echoed through the room. A voice, low and menacing, spoke from the shadows. "Step away from the cage." Ethan froze, every muscle tensing. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, dressed in black, a pistol aimed directly at Ethan's chest. The mother dog growled low and deep, stepping protectively in front of Ethan, her ears flattened and teeth bared. The man smirked. "You really shouldn't have followed the dog, officer." Ethan's grip tightened around his own weapon, his mind racing. He had walked straight into a trap, and judging by the look in the stranger's eyes, he wasn't leaving this basement alive. Ethan Carter stood frozen, his flashlight casting eerie shadows against the damp, crumbling walls. The barrel of a pistol was aimed squarely at his chest, held by a masked man lurking in the darkness of the underground room. The caged child whimpered, his tiny hands clutching the rusted bars as silent tears streaked his dirty face. The mother dog growled low, her body rigid, muscles coiled like a spring, ready to launch at the threat. Ethan's mind raced. Whoever this man was, he had been waiting, which meant he wasn't alone. "Step away from the cage," the masked man ordered, his voice calm but deadly. Ethan slowly raised his hands, pretending to comply, but his eyes darted around, assessing every possible escape route. He couldn't let this guy take the kid. "All right," Ethan said carefully, his tone steady. "Let's talk about this." The man let out a dry chuckle. "There's nothing to talk about, officer. You shouldn't have come here." Behind him, Ethan could hear the storm raging above ground, thunder shaking the walls, the wind howling through the cracks. He just needed a few seconds, one opening. The dog barked sharply, snapping the tension like a whip. The moment the masked man glanced at the dog, Ethan moved. In one swift motion, he lunged forward, grabbing the barrel of the gun and twisting it away. Bang! The gun went off, the deafening shot ricocheting in the small room. The bullet slammed into the wall, inches from the child's cage. The boy screamed, curling into a ball. Ethan drove his elbow into the man's gut, sending him stumbling backward. The dog lunged, her powerful jaws clamping onto the man's forearm. He howled in pain, struggling to shake her off. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed his own gun, swung it around, and slammed the handle against the attacker's temple. The masked man collapsed, unconscious, before he hit the floor. Panting, Ethan wasted no time. He turned toward the caged boy, his hands moving quickly to break the rusted lock. The mother dog whimpered anxiously, licking the boy's tiny fingers through the bars, as if urging him to hold on. "Hang in there, kid," Ethan muttered, his fingers working frantically. "I've got you." The lock finally snapped open. Ethan swung the cage door wide and reached inside, gently pulling the trembling boy into his arms. The child clung to him like a lifeline, his small body shaking from cold and fear. "It's okay," Ethan whispered. "You're safe now." But before relief could settle, something slammed shut above them, the basement door. And then, footsteps. Ethan's stomach dropped. The mother dog's ears perked, her entire body stiffening as she turned toward the stairs. More footsteps. More than one person. Back up. Ethan set the boy down gently, pressing a finger to his lips in a silent signal to stay quiet. The child nodded, his wide eyes full of terror. They had to get out. Now. Ethan grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Carter. I need immediate backup at the abandoned warehouse by the river. Armed suspects present. I've secured a child. Repeat, I have a child in danger, but we are trapped. Over. Static." Then, "Copy that, Carter. Units en route. Hold your position." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Not an option," he muttered. The mother dog whined softly, her tail low, her body tense but ready. She wouldn't leave without them. The first set of boots appeared at the top of the stairs. Ethan grabbed the gun from the unconscious man on the floor, checking the ammo. 1 shot fired earlier, meaning 5 bullets left. He exhaled sharply. Not enough. A voice echoed from above. "We know you're down there, officer. Hand over the boy, and we let you live." Ethan scoffed. Like hell, he turned to the dog. "You ready, girl?" She bared her sharp teeth. He turned to the boy. "When I say go, you run, okay? Stick close to me and don't stop." The boy sniffled, but he nodded. Ethan raised his gun toward the stairway. "All right then," he murmured under his breath. "Let's do this." Ethan braced himself, his heart hammering against his ribs as the footsteps grew closer. The storm outside raged on, thunder rattling the warehouse, masking some of the noise. The mother dog stood firm beside him, her sharp eyes fixed on the top of the stairs, her growl a low, deadly warning. The little boy clutched Ethan's sleeve, his small fingers digging into the fabric, his entire body trembling. A shadow stretched down the stairwell, then another. "Last chance, officer," a gruff voice sneered. "Hand over the kid, and we might let you walk out of here alive." Ethan tightened his grip on his gun. "You must really think I'm stupid," he shot back, his voice calm despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. A pause. Then, boom, the door above them burst open, and 3 men stormed down the stairs. Ethan didn't hesitate. Bang! He fired, hitting the first man in the leg. The guy screamed, collapsing against the wall. The other 2 rushed forward. The mother dog launched herself at the second man, her teeth sinking deep into his arm. He howled, trying to shake her off, but she held on like a vice, snarling viciously. Ethan pivoted, grabbing a rusty metal pipe from the floor. The third guy swung at him with a knife. Ethan ducked, the blade slicing the air just inches from his face. With all his strength, he drove the pipe into the attacker's stomach. The man choked, staggering backward. Ethan grabbed the boy, shielding him behind his body as he kicked the knife away. The mother dog finally let go, sending the second man crashing into a pile of crates. For a brief moment, silence filled the room. Then, Ethan grabbed the boy's hand. "Run!" The little boy bolted toward the exit, the dog sprinting beside him. Ethan turned and fired 2 more shots, forcing the injured men to stay down. Then he ran after them, his breath ragged, his injured shoulder throbbing with pain. They burst out of the basement, into the storm. The cold night air slammed into them, rain pounding down in heavy sheets. Ethan's car was too far. They'd never make it before backup arrived. Then he spotted it. An old truck, keys still in the ignition. "Go! Get in!" he shouted. The boys scrambled into the passenger seat, the dog jumping in right after him. Ethan yanked the door open, slid behind the wheel, and turned the key. The engine roared to life. Headlights flashed behind them. The bad guys were coming. Ethan slammed the gas pedal. The truck lurched forward, tires spinning against the muddy ground. Gunshots rang out, bullets shattering the back window, but they were already speeding away. The mother dog pressed herself against the boy protectively, her ears flat, her body still tense and alert. Ethan gritted his teeth, eyes locked on the road ahead. They weren't safe yet, but they were alive, and that was enough for now. The truck sped through the storm, its tires splashing through deep puddles as Ethan gripped the wheel with white-knuckled hands. The rain blurred his vision, but he couldn't afford to slow down. In the back seat, the little boy clutched the mother dog, his small body shaking from fear and exhaustion. The dog, despite her own wounds and exhaustion, pressed against him, offering silent comfort. Ethan glanced at them in the rearview mirror. "I have to keep them safe." Headlights flashed behind them. His gut twisted. "They're still following us." The black SUV in the distance was gaining ground, its powerful engine roaring through the rain-soaked night. Ethan gritted his teeth. Scanning the road ahead, he needed to lose them fast. A sharp turn loomed ahead. Perfect. Ethan jerked the wheel hard. The truck skidded violently, mud and gravel spraying in all directions. The tires nearly lost grip, but he held tight, maneuvering the vehicle off the main road and onto a narrow forest path. The SUV rushed past, unable to stop in time. Ethan's heart pounded. It worked. But the relief was short-lived. The path ahead was rough, barely more than a trail through the dense woods. Branches scraped against the truck, the suspension groaning with every deep pothole. "Hold on," Ethan muttered. The boy squeezed his eyes shut, clinging to the dog. Behind them, another set of headlights appeared. Another car. Ethan cursed under his breath. They weren't getting away that easily. Then, a sharp pain shot through his shoulder, nearly making him lose control. His injury was catching up to him. Blood soaking his sleeve hurt, his arm numb and trembling. "I can't keep this up forever." He needed a plan, now. Ethan's eyes scanned the darkness, searching for an advantage. Then he saw it. A riverbank up ahead, steep but not impossible to descend. It was risky, but it was better than getting caught. "Hang on." The little boy barely had time to react before Ethan jerked the wheel hard to the right. The truck lurched off the dirt path, bouncing wildly as it plowed through the underbrush. Then, it tilted downward. The world dropped out from beneath them as the truck careened down the muddy slope toward the rushing river below. The headlights of their pursuers vanished behind the trees, lost in the chaos. Ethan braced for impact. Crash! The truck slammed to a stop, wedged between thick trees just before hitting the water. Silence. For a long second, Ethan didn't move. Then, a small sniffle. The boy. Ethan turned, ignoring the pain. "You okay, kid?" The boy nodded shakily, eyes wide with fear but unharmed. The mother dog let out a low, reassuring whine, licking the child's face. They had survived. But the danger wasn't over yet. Ethan knew they couldn't stay here. The men hunting them would be tracking their trail, and it wouldn't take long before they found the crashed truck. They needed to move, on foot. He pushed open the door, groaning as pain flared in his shoulder. "We have to go," he said, reaching for the boy. The little one hesitated, but then the dog nudged him forward, guiding him toward Ethan. "Good girl." Ethan scooped the boy into his good arm, gritting his teeth against the pain, and set off toward the woods. The dog trotted beside them, her ears alert, sensing the urgency in the air. The sound of rushing water filled the night as they slipped into the dense foliage, the darkness swallowing them whole. Behind them, the distant roar of an engine cut through the storm. Their hunters were still out there, and they weren't giving up. The forest was thick and unyielding, its tangled branches clawing at Ethan as he pushed forward, the boy clinging tightly to his chest. The storm had eased, but the night was still heavy with mist, wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud. Beside him, the mother dog moved with silent urgency, her ears flicking back, sensing danger before it came. Ethan knew they were being hunted. The men from the warehouse, whoever they were, whatever they wanted, weren't going to stop, and he wasn't about to let them win. Not after everything. Not with this child's life on the line. A single gunshot split the silence. Ethan's pulse spiked. They were closer than he thought. He dove behind a fallen log, shielding the boy with his body. The mother dog flattened herself beside them, her eyes locked on the direction of the gunfire, her body rigid with alertness. Ethan calmed his breathing, forcing himself to think. They couldn't keep running forever. They needed a way out. Then, a flash of light in the distance, a road, and beyond it, the faint outline of a house. Salvation. Ethan whispered to the dog, "Go." She didn't hesitate. With a low growl, she dashed forward, her powerful body cutting through the underbrush like a shadow. Ethan followed, keeping low, his injured arms screaming with pain. The boy whimpered softly, burying his face into Ethan's chest, his small body trembling. Ethan tightened his grip. "Just a little longer, kid." They burst through the trees, the road just ahead. Then, headlights. A car screeched to a stop, its bright beams blinding them for a moment. Ethan froze, heart pounding. Then, a voice. "Get in." Ethan didn't hesitate. He rushed forward, pulling open the passenger door and sliding in, the boy still cradled in his arms. The dog leaped in after them, just as the driver slammed the gas pedal, tires spinning against the wet pavement. Ethan barely had time to register the driver. A woman, mid-30s, sharp-eyed and steady-handed, as she navigated the road with expert precision. Then, gunfire. Bullets pinged against the back of the car, but the woman didn't flinch. She veered off the road, barreling down a hidden dirt path. The black SUVs shrieked to a halt behind them, unable to follow. Ethan exhaled a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Who?" he started. The woman cut him off. "Stay down. We're not safe yet." Ethan studied her, his instincts screaming for answers. But right now, the only thing that mattered was getting the boy and the dog out of this alive. The safe house was isolated, hidden deep in the outskirts of town. The woman, who introduced herself as Rachel Carter, an undercover investigator, parked the car behind an old barn, turning off the headlights. "We don't have much time," she said, reaching into the glove compartment and pulling out a small pistol. Ethan, still holding the boy, felt exhaustion creeping in. "Who are these guys?" he demanded. Rachel's jaw tightened. "A trafficking ring," she said. "For years they've been taking kids, moving them through underground networks." Ethan's stomach twisted. The mother dog let out a low whimper, pressing against the boy protectively. Rachel nodded at her. "You said she led you to the warehouse?" Ethan nodded. Rachel exhaled, shaking her head in awe. "Damn, she must have been protecting him all along." Ethan ran a hand through his damp hair. "They won't stop," he murmured. "Not until they get him back." Rachel's expression hardened. "Then we make sure they don't." They barricaded the house, positioning themselves near the windows, weapons ready. The mother dog refused to leave the boy's side, her golden eyes sharp, her ears tuned to every sound. Then, engines. The distant roar of SUVs cut through the silence. Ethan's grip on his gun tightened. Rachel positioned herself near the back door. "They're coming," she whispered. The first crash came moments later. A group of men storming toward the house, guns raised. Ethan took aim, squeezing the trigger. Boom! A man dropped, clutching his leg as he hit the ground. Another charged forward, but Rachel was faster. A single shot sent him staggering back, but there were too many. They were being pushed back. Ethan cursed, his mind racing for an opening. Then, a blur of motion. The mother dog sprang into action, launching herself at one of the attackers, her teeth sinking deep into his arm. The man screamed, struggling to shake her off, but she held on, refusing to let go. Ethan seized the distraction, knocking out another assailant with a hard blow. Rachel fired another shot, hitting one of the tires on their SUVs, disabling their escape. Then, sirens. Red and blue flashed in the distance, followed by the thunder of approaching vehicles. The remaining attackers scattered, their leader shouting for them to retreat. Ethan lowered his gun, his breath ragged. It was over. The police swept in, making arrests, securing the area. Ethan leaned against the wall, watching as the boy was gently lifted into the arms of a paramedic. The child turned, his tear-streaked face searching for the mother dog. She trotted forward, her tail wagging weakly, pressing her nose against his cheek. The boy wrapped his arms around her, his small body shaking with relief. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. Rachel stepped beside him. "They're safe now," she murmured. Ethan nodded, watching as the child and the dog were led toward a waiting ambulance. "Yeah," he whispered. "They are." Weeks later, the mother dog sat at the doorstep of a cozy home, her ears twitching at the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned. The boy stood there, his small hands reaching out. "Come inside," he whispered. The dog hesitated. Then she stepped forward, nuzzling into his touch. Behind them, Ethan leaned against the doorframe, smiling softly. Rachel stepped up beside him. "You're keeping them?" Ethan chuckled. "Didn't really have a choice, did I?" The boy giggled, wrapping his arms around the mother dog. The dog let out a soft huff, curling up beside him. Ethan exhaled, feeling something settle in his chest. Something right. For the first time in a long time, he was home.